Hey viewers, welcome to episode 11 of my Matlab Programming course. Today we are improving on our digital clock that we made last time, and we are going to start off with the exact same program that we used last time and then add on some things that would be nice. For example, I already implemented everything, but I put an option to count backwards. So basically you give in a time and it counts to 0. I put in a setting that you can actually set your clock to the begin time that you want. I made an animation for the background. I made a little bit of an animation earlier, and I will show you how you can actually edit your clock, because I said last time it's completely modular, so you can actually replace one module with another. And in this case, we're going to replace the little boring block that I used as a segment, basically, the red thingies. I'm going to replace that with something else, and of course you can do whatever you want at that point with it. This is the last time I'm going to come back to this. I will be able to do way more with it. Oh wait, and I built in a break, so basically I can stop it from running now. Yeah, this is the last time I'm going to go over this clock, because after this, well, even though there's much more that you can do to it, you don't really learn anything new from it. So next time we'll be probably going back to episode 9, where I put some questions for you to answer. And since nobody answered it last time yet, well, it was 2 days later, so I can kind of imagine that. Yeah, I'm not going to continue on that, or I wasn't going to continue on that, but well, the next episode might actually be that, unless I can come up with something new. So anyhow, we are going to run through this program one line at a time and just see only the lines that are edited. First of all, CLC clear close all. I want to point that out to you every time because I use it in virtually any program. Before starting, you want to clear the command window, you want to clear the workspace, and you want to close all figures for the simple reason that it distracts you. If there's an error, you want to have only that error show up on your workspace or on your command window. Also, you only want the variables that are actually in your program in your workspace, because the rest only takes up memory and therefore time, but also, well, it's messy. You don't want your workspace polluted with variables from last time. Anyway, first of all, we are starting off here with function. Function episode 11 means that there are no more variables in the workspace after I'm done executing. If I remove this, that's what I had last time. All of the variables will stay in here, which is very nice for debugging, but it's not so nice if you're done debugging and just want to run the program. Basically, these lines are the same. Then we have settings. This is my settings window. I will show it to you. Yeah, we should be able to run this no problem. There we go. This is my settings window. As you can see, it has 5 fields: hours, minutes, seconds, 24-hour notation, yes, no, and count backwards, yes, no. The title is settings, and then you have all the lengths of how much you can actually put in there. It is set to 1 line, 30, or 1 row, 30 columns. So I can fill this in. I want to start at 0, 0, 0. I want 24-hour notation, and I wanted to count forward, because if I start at 0, 0, 0, otherwise it will be done immediately. Then I hit OK, and as you can see, it runs to the next. So this is all new. First of all, we are going to extract the information the user just put in by saying settings is now, as you can see, it's a cell. It's a 5 by 1 cell. And it looks like this. So if you double click on this, you get this. It looks like 0, 0, 0, yes, no. And I will go over the exceptions in a moment, which is why I'm only doing the first part, not the second part of these lines. String to double, which is just a function that you use to make a double out of a string, from settings 1. And settings 1 is 0, in this case the hours. and then that is stored in hour. Same for minute, but then for settings 2, settings 3. By doing this, I'm going to get 3 numbers, and because they're doubles. And well, basically, that's all I wanted. Then we're going to get settings 4 here. And for settings 4, we have a different situations. First of all, we're going to set all of the maximum numbers. But for 24-hour notation, you get the maximum 23. But if someone says 24-hour notation no, then it's 12-hour notation, because there are only 2 options. So the hour max is going to be replaced by 11 instead of 23, which is very easy, I think. So then settings 5, which is do I want to count backwards, is going to be handled by a multiplication. Basically, if I multiply by -1, it's going to count backwards. If I multiply by 1, it's going to count forwards. And we will see how that works later. This is how I set it up. Of course, you can set it up in a different way. Just wanted to show you that you can actually get string to double, which makes a double out of a string. But yeah, you have to check whether it's a double first, whether it's a number first. Otherwise, you get not a number, which we will handle in a moment. And then here, because this is a string, so you either type yes or no. And yeah, because I want to compare those, I have to use string compare, and the I here, so this is string compare, strncmp. The I is because I don't want it to look at the case. So basically, if I type it with a capital letter, it shouldn't matter. So if I do it like this, yes, or I don't know, yes or yes, it's all the same for string compare I, not for string compare itself. Then it has to be an exact match, and I don't want that. So I'm using that to evaluate whether settings 4 is equal to no. And no has to be between those little apostrophes because it is a string. So the string no and the string in settings 4 have to be the same. And I'm only looking at the first 2 letters. So if I do no or not or nowhere, it's all the same, because it's only going to look at the first 2 letters. If the first 2 letters are no, it's all good. So it's going to trigger this and set the hours max to 11 instead of 23. So then settings 5, same thing. I want to compare the first 3 letters. If they're yes, then it's going to multiply by -1 because it has to count backwards. Otherwise, so that means in all other situations, even if you type 0, or if you type 5, or if you type, I don't know, something. Anything that's not yes will trigger this one. Also here, anything that's not no will trigger the 24-hour notation, because it will not trigger the 12-hour notation. That's basically how simple it is. Then the seconds at the start are going to be the seconds that I put in, plus 60 times the minutes, plus 3600 times the hours. And then I'm setting everything back to 0. So only the seconds at the start, those are the only ones that really matter. So seeing that should point to you that I'm only working with seconds, and I'm going to translate those into minutes and hours and such later on, because that is how my clock worked. That's how any clock really works. Then we have speed is 10, which is just a variable for me to test it out, because it will run 10 times as fast as it normally would. So it allows me to kind of see what's going on if I make something that lasts several seconds, or if I want to check minutes or hours, so I don't have to wait too long. Then last time I told you that there was a problem because the clock wouldn't actually run on time. And that was because and I'm going to put on a light here because it's kind of dark. The thing that we saw was that it executed, then it had this pause 1 that's still here. It is commented out now. And then from that pause 1, it waited 1 second, but the execution time was not put in there. That is what we're going to change with tick. You have tick and then you have talk. Basically, if you do tick tock, so if you do tick first and then talk, you get an elapsed time. But every time I type talk, it is going to just give me the time from the first tick. So tick resets it, obviously, and then talk starts giving you the amount of time from that point onwards. So what we're doing is, because we have, well, here's our speed. That was just for me. But we're going to round the number, so the talk, to match seconds only. So in this case, I want 10 times the seconds. So it's basically taking 3.4 here, multiplies that by 10. Well, 3.48 actually. And then it's going to multiply that by 10, round it, so it will result in 35. So elapsed time 35 seconds instead of 3.5 seconds. Anyhow, from that onwards, we have the seconds are our start seconds, so that's where we started, which can either be 000 or any other time that you want. Plus the multiplication, that's for if I'm counting forward, this is just a plus. But if it's counting backwards, this will become a minus. So it's either plus the elapsed time or minus the elapsed time. That's how we do that. So that's why in one time the one is counting forward, the other is counting backwards, because the one is adding to the number, the other is just subtracting from the number. Here we said minute is 0 and hour is 0. We have to do that because we're going to calculate the minute and the hours. With our previous one, because we only edited second, it didn't matter. But here we added second, minute, and hour. So yeah, we have to reset the minutes and hours every loop. And because of that, yeah, we have to put it inside the loop this time. So if multiplication is -1 and second is smaller than 0, second is 0, which means that if I'm counting backwards, so from a number to 0, then once it reaches 0, once it goes below 0, I want it to stay at 0, and I'm just going to say running is false, which means that my while running loop actually will break. So it will run one more time, and then it says running is no longer true. So I'm going to stop. So this is my trigger to stop if I'm counting backwards. Obviously, if I'm counting forwards, I don't need a break because it can count on forever. If, however, you would want to make a break, you can just do a similar thing as I did here. So for forwards, if seconds is bigger or equal to, I don't know, 200. Yeah, I can just set running as false. That's all I need. This would trigger at second is 200, but also at second is 201 and second is 202. It will never reach that, but it will set running as false and it will just break out of the loop. I'm not going to do this, but just showing you how it's done. That will break this loop and it will, well, skip the entire clock then and just, well, be done. So this is all the same as last time, but now I made it while loops instead of if loops, because now I'm actually calculating from a bigger number. So last time I just added 1 to the seconds every time. But this time I'm using the actual elapsed time, which means that that elapsed time can be any number. And I have to, well, calculate from seconds to minutes first. So seconds minus 60 means minutes plus 1. And then after I'm done with that, I have the correct number of seconds. Then I want the correct number of minutes. So I'm going to do minutes minus 60 every time it's bigger than 59. And hours plus 1. And then every time that hours is above 24, above 23, I'm going to go with hours minus 24. So it can run forever. It will never run into trouble because, well, the seconds will continue. So this loop will continue on until seconds is below 60. This will loop on until minutes is below 60, and this will loop on until hours are below 24. So I will never get a time that's too high, basically. Then this is exactly the same. I didn't edit it. This, This is exactly the same. This is exactly the same. Yeah, only I made segment 1 instead of segment, but it's the same picture. It just, I made a segment 2 now, so we will see that later. Then this is all the same. This is, oh, hang on, we want to have zeros here. This is the black background. I will show you the animation, which is this, later on, and we will discuss that later on. So this is all the same, the same, the same, the same, the same. So the only things I really changed are in that first part. So the way the clock works is edited, and I now have settings to deal with. So we're going to just have a look at what's up. So first of all, if I don't fill in anything, it's going to take, oh, hang on. It's going to not know what numbers there are. So let's cancel out of this because I wanted to discuss this as well. Obviously, you're dealing with a user. Users are stupid. You always have to remember that. If you're making a program for someone, users are stupid. So they will fill in the wrong things. Even though I'm asking for hours, people will still try what happens if you do certain things. So if they fill in something that's not a number, or they don't fill it in at all, which also happens, what we're going to get back, and we will see that, yeah, I can actually demo that. Yeah, let's just demo that. I'm not filling in anything. So settings, as we will see, is all those empty thingies, empty variables. So if I do this, what I set up to be like hours, so I want to see what this actually does. It says not a number. Not a number is not very useful. So I'm going to check whether it is not a number. So if is not a number hour. So if my variable hour is not a number, then it becomes 0. I'm doing the same thing for minutes and the same thing for seconds, which means that if I run through this, and we will do that, then hours is going to be 0, minutes is going to be 0, seconds is going to be 0. And the funny thing is, if I fill in, yes, that is correct, so then it's going to say, yes, that is correct, sir. And it still will work. So it will still, if I run through this, say 0, 0, and 0. So it does exactly what I want. So it doesn't matter whether I fill in nothing, a number, or something, yeah, else with letters, or I don't know, it doesn't even matter. If you fill in something wrong, it's going to assume you mean 0. If you fill in something correct, it will do the correct thing. The same goes for these, by the way, because I set them up differently. They will work automatically. This is a string compare. It doesn't care what you do. In this case, settings 4 is correct. So I will show that to you. Settings 4, correct. Correct is not no. So it's going to assume that whatever, I don't care what you filled in. It's not no, so it's yes. And that is exactly the same in the next one. So here you can see our max is still 23 because it just skips over it because it's not no. Same goes for this one. This is sir, obviously. I can show it to you. There you go. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of hay fever today. It's not yes. So it's going to skip over this, this first part and just say multiplication is 1. And there you go. Else multiplication is 1, and so it doesn't even care because it's a string. It doesn't care what you do. You can just fill in anything. And then, of course, the rest will run smoothly. Yeah, let's make the rest run by filling in something real. 0 hours, 10 minutes, and 50 seconds. I don't care about this, so I do want the 24-hour notation, and I don't want to count backwards. And as you can see, it will just start running. Obviously, because I have 10 times speed, it will run a lot faster than it normally would. But the clock still works. The clock will work perfectly if I set the speed to 1 and just say, okay, here you see it's exactly 1 second per second. It gets corrected every second, well, multiple times a second. So it's not like an atomic clock, but it is at 1 second accurate. So it's actually on 0.01 second accurate, something like that, because it executes like 100 times per second. And because of that, every time it gets corrected for, well, where we actually are, and because it has a round, however, so because it has a round in where we are, it can be half a second off. So that's your accuracy, even though, so your accuracy of the clock itself is pretty good, only, well, it's at the wrong number every now and then, but yeah, well, let's not go into that. Anyway, it will never run with that problem that we had last time. It's just the rounding error that we have somewhere here. So this rounding error makes that we have a problem. We can also say we want it to be something different, because we know that at 0.5 seconds it's going to jump to 1. So if I subtract 0.5 seconds, then I know that it will probably run better, or in a different time at least. So it will take longer than it, because if I do minus 0.1 or 0.5, sorry, then it will actually start at 0 once again. But as you can see, it waits for a full second until it jumps to 1, because now the 0.5 that triggers the 1, so the 0.5 that gets rounded to 1, is actually now the 1 that gets rounded to 1. So yeah, just a little trick. And by doing it like this, you fix the problem that you had with the 0.5 seconds round off, because you actually start at minus 0.5 now instead of at 0, and therefore you have a full second before the counter actually reaches 0.5. I have to do this, of course, but it's the same because I have speed 1. Yeah, let's go on and do the rest. Do I have to explain any of this? I don't think so. Oh yeah, let's do this. This is actually cute. So I had the red blocks in my clock previously, and now we want to, well, just experiment with what would happen if we put in a second thing. What did I just mess up? Oh, I messed this up. Hang on. I don't want to debug. But yeah, now we have a dude that's standing there and stretching his arms. I don't know. It's a dude. I don't know if you can actually see it. I don't know if the resolution is good enough for it. But basically, you can take any picture and make it into a clock at this point. I did keep the dots because I didn't want to replace it with something else. I'm lazy like that, but you can do the same thing with the dots. It doesn't matter. So we're going to keep the dudes, and we're going to, hang on, I want to correct my 0.5. It annoys me. Yeah, we do this plus 0.5 minus 1. No, that doesn't work. Never mind. Never mind. I want to correct it, but I'm not going to do it live here because people are already not too interested in this. So let's at least give them something. So we're going to uncomment my my animation then. My animation is a pretty big amount of crap here, but it's really just copy-pasted every time. So I'll explain what it does, and then it's copy-pasted every time. First of all, we're going to say background pixels is background1.jpg. Yeah, that's fine. And then I'm going to multiply that by 2 to make it a little bit brighter, because this particular picture is not very bright. The others are fine, by the way. So I only do this here. Here it's ×1, and for the rest it's not even in there. Yeah, it is in there. So this can be done, and this can be done, and yeah, here it has to be multiplied once again, because it's the same picture. The background count then, you saw me just uncommented here. It is set to 0 before the loop starts. And then every time it displays the clock, it's going to count +1. Every time it executes this, basically. It's going to say +1, it's here as well, it's here as well. It's here as well, it's here as well. And here it's reset to 0. So basically for the first 50 frames, it's going to just display background 1 times 2. So it's a brighter version of background 1. And it's going to add 1 to the count. Then once it reaches 51, it's going to execute this one. Yeah, this one loads in 2 pictures, background 1 and background 2. And it kind of subtracts from the background count. It subtracts the starting number of this section. The section starts at 50, well, 51 technically. But if I do 51 minus 50, that means this is 1. And it's going to say that this, so this one is going to fade out. So 1 minus, well, 1/20th times the partial count. And it's going to add, so it's going to fade in the other picture, so picture number 2. And it's going to do that with 1/20th, well, times the number of seconds in this part as well. So the partial count is basically, it restarts when this part starts. So it's going to count from 1 to 20. And every time this one becomes a little vaguer, this one becomes a little brighter. And by doing so, you will go from one picture to the other. So the one picture fades while the other comes back. And because of that, you're going to have a very smooth transition from one picture to the next. Obviously, you can just do this with any picture in any situation, but it's a nice thing to have. Every time it runs, though, it's going to count 1 extra. And then once we reach 71, sorry. Once we reach 71, we're going to do this until 120. And this just displays that second picture. Then we're going to go from picture 2 to picture 3 with that same amount. And then we display picture 3. Then we're going to go from picture 3 to picture 1. Obviously, you can do this very smoothly with like a few lines of code, but then it's not really comprehensible for you guys. So it's going to go from 3 to 1 with the exception that, well, picture 1 was multiplied by 2 because it needed to be brighter. So by doing so, I had to, because I had to get to picture 2 times 2, I have to multiply this by 2, and of course it has to be double. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing that I did before, only, well, with a higher amount of this particular picture. It doesn't really matter. You do get the point, I'm assuming. Then once it reaches 209, it's going to execute this, and then at 210, it's going to go to else. And I didn't do else if blah 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 because I just want this to be done every time something else is in here. So if it bugs, it's also going to do this, and I'm going to notice that. But at 210, it's going to display only background picture 1. It's going to multiply that by 2, and then it's going to reset the background count, meaning that the loop will start over. So this is actually 210, and then this is 1 again. It's as easy as that. And so what does it look like? It looks like this. So it's going to take a while because it has to execute like 50 times before it actually shows anything. And there's the transition. And then we're going to go into the second background picture, and then we're going to transition again into the third background picture. And then we're going to transition again to the first background picture. And that keeps looping and looping and looping and looping forever, because that is the way it goes. You can make this however the hell you want. You can replace colors if you want. You can do whatever. I mean, it's your program. You can do whatever you want with it. And that is kind of the strength of programming. You make up the rules of what can be done and what cannot be done. So let's say we want to do segment 1 instead of segment 2. And yeah, then it just does that. So just replacing one picture with another, that's fine. Also, replacing the backgrounds would be fine. I mean, it doesn't matter, obviously, which one you want. And you can add on as much as you want at this point. But as I said, this is the last I will do with it. I'm also going to demonstrate to you what it does if you actually go backwards. So let's say I want to count from 0 hours, 10 minutes, and 0 seconds. I don't care about that. And I do want to count backwards. So as you can see, it will just count backwards. And it will still do the animation. So there you go. The animation is based on how many times it has executed the script. It has nothing to do with the time. So because of that, it will run a little bit different times here, because here it can actually skip seconds because I have the speed up. But it's still going to execute this. And by the way, if you get to 0, which shouldn't take too long, but if it gets to 0, remember that I did build in the running is false. So it will stay at 0, it will just stop executing, and we can see that in the bottom left here. Oh, I think my picture will be over there. I will remove that, and you can see the busy. In the bottom left it says busy if it's executing, and you will see that once it reaches 0, the busy will disappear, and yeah, it will no longer be busy. And there you go, 0, 0, 0. Everything stops. So the background animation stops as well because the execution has stopped. You can, of course, keep the background animation going if you want to, and just have the 0, 0, 0 set like that. Because the only thing you need to do is, instead of making running is false, you have to say that my clock needs to just stop running. So you just comment out everything from that point onward. You make sure that everything that has to do with the clock is out, and everything that has to do with the background is still on. And it will just keep executing, keep going, keep doing whatever. It's really that easy. And yeah, let's see what it looks like if we go into speed is 1, because it will look differently. 0, 0, 0. Oh, just hit OK, whatever. So here it just runs 1 second at a time, and it will start changing because every 50 executions it will change, or every 70, I don't know. I think it's 60, but then there's a little bit of an overlap because of the first frames and blah blah blah. It doesn't really matter. It will just keep changing, and the rate of change has to do in this case with the amount of executions. You can of course make it execute like every 0.1 second, and then you have a little more control over how fast those changes are. You can also link the changes to your clock. If you say every time that the clock hits 50, or every time the seconds get up by 1, my count gets up by 1, that's fine too. You can make whatever you want from this. But you can see that it's very flexible, and it is basically the way it should work. So it is completely the way it should work as it is now. Yeah, I really have nothing to add to that. So anyway, hope you learned something today, and I will see you next time.